My name is Alina Karimamusama. I am founder of an organization here in Zambia called the Women's Economic Empowerment Project. And what we basically do is we work with young people and women to basically emancipate poverty and eradicate period poverty and try to empower them with sustainable skills for development, which include financial literacy, social entrepreneur leadership trainings. We do give small grants and funds of about $100 for women who have startup businesses. And I work with various organizations as a consultant for women and youth projects. That's just in a nutshell. And Kiiza, would you mind doing your introduction?
Sure. Thank you so much, Aline, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. So my name's Kiiza Hussein Saddam. I'm young, as you may know, those who have read my profile, and I'm totally driven and inspired with a passion to make a difference in the world, through taking action on solving some of the pressing challenges that we have in our communities. And this is through empowering young people, advocating where need be, like on human rights ground, and also equipping young people with knowledge and skills so that they can, translate this knowledge into also uplifting their communities and their lives. So that's what really motivates me to do all this, and I'm glad to join you here and share my ideas and my views and our experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiiza. Brighton, would you please introduce yourself?
So hi, everybody. My name is Brighton Kaoma. I'm from Zambia. Currently, I'm at Columbia University in New York, where I'm finishing my training in public administration and environmental science and policy at the Columbia School of International and Public Affairs. I'm also working with the Columbia University Earth Institute, helping with communication and sustainability. Back in Zambia, I co-founded a non-profit which works with young people to amplify their voices using media. And recently, I co-founded two for-profit companies. One is a transportation company, which provides last-mile transportation services. And the other one is a green architecture and regenerative building startup, both in Zambia. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to sharing my thoughts and experiences during this conversation.
Thank you. And Kiiza, I'm gonna just throw this question at you now. There's a lot going on with COVID-19, and it's affected how a lot of countries are operating, and it's also affected how non-government organizations and specifically youth-led organizations are operating. I know that for me here in Zambia, we, in short, for Women's Economic Empowerment Project, we were asked by a large American corporation to return some funds that they had given us because they also had to do, in short, damage control in their countries. So that's just one way of how COVID-19 is affecting how we operate. So what are your day-to-day operations looking like now with the current global crisis? Have you shut down operations completely? Are you working remotely like us?
And I'm sorry to hear that you've lost some of the funds because of this crisis, which none of us really anticipated that it would happen. To be frank, I myself am affected. I was just going to start on a project that was around worth 100,000 USD. And that was quite an amount. And we had almost had everything on point, and we were just waiting for the right time to start in March. And then this came up, and this whole money was kind of withheld, and we couldn't do anything related to what we were planning to do, which has nothing to do with COVID-19, because we never knew it would reach to this magnitude. So by saying that, and also seeing what was transpiring around the world, now I started receiving some of the information on my phone. There's one day I woke up and I got a message from my mother, and it was a clip telling me how to protect myself from COVID-19. And you know what was inside the video? It was things to do: eat garlic, stand in the sunshine, take warm water. And I was like blown away because at least I had some information about COVID-19 because I could do some research, I could read, I could follow news. Then it struck my mind that some people really are believing this, and this could be the norm. You know, in people in villages, people, those who are not informed, who have not access to, to reliable information, they could believe this and they could practice this, and it could end up affecting many people and losing so many people. So I decided to say, okay, now that I cannot just simply watch and reshare also this kind of information, which I can't do in any case, but there are so many people saturating this information. Then I said, why not take an active role, first of all, to educate the populace, collaborate with those who have some knowledge, and find a way to share reliable information from reliable sources, but also help in one way or the other by giving small things that can uplift some of these people's lives. So that's how I was now more energetic and passionate to start these kind of awareness discussions. And I realized that so many companies and organizations were struck and stranded on what to do because their work was not related to health. No one had this kind of expertise, and other organizations could close down, waiting maybe that this virus will go away and they will continue with their project. And even up to today, there are organizations that are not active, but also for us, it gave us now an opportunity to reinvent ourselves and also, reshape the direction, kind of find another direction we can take amidst of these global challenges that require so many people to come up, so many young leaders who can, rise up in the midst of this challenge and find a way to contribute towards finding the solution to the current problem. And these are the things we are doing now, like sharing the little knowledge we have, sharing our own experiences. That has kind of become part of us, and we are ready and happy to find ourselves, still leaders amidst of, these challenges.
Okay, thank you so much, Kiiza. And Brighton, what about you? I know that already you're kind of working remotely from your organization, which is here in Zambia, while you're in the States for school. But how has this crisis affected the way that Agents of Change is operating right now?
At Agents of Change, what we've decided to do temporarily to just cope with the current shifting of the tectonic plates is allowing everybody to work remotely. So we have a workforce of about 5 to 6 full-time members of the organization that are now working from home. But also we do provide small pockets of monthly stipends to our regional partners. So these are radio station mentors that guide the young people in the production of weekly radio podcasts. So since they are no longer able to work at the radio station, we've come up with some incentives that can help them from a financial point of view. I'll be able to share more about the sources of our funding as an organization, because bulk of the funding that we receive comes through endowment funding. So these are big philanthropies in the United States and in the United Kingdom and in Sweden that are advancing sustainability. So one of the projects that we're currently working on is called Health Our Home. So it's a sustainability project that allows young people to advocate for behavioral change towards resource consumption, climate action, but also promoting more regenerative and circular economies. So that has helped us to cushion the challenges that we might have been faced with from a financial point of view as an organization, because we received more of an endowment funding that could allow us to continue with our operations. But also the challenge comes in with other non-direct costs that we spend as an organization. For example, there are people that we support, people that clean the office, people that do other things that might not directly come from projects, but come from the liquidity of the organization. So that to a larger degree has plummeted, the resources has plummeted to a greater degree for the last couple of months. And I know in the next few months we'll equally be affected in a way that never imagined before. So collectively thinking about ways of responding and restructuring how we operate.
Brighton, thank you so much for sharing. And I'll follow up with another question just after I share some of the challenges that my organization has also been facing. Given COVID-19, we had to decide which parts of our work are most relevant right now to the need. And that was very hard to do because we already had ongoing programs and some of them have come to a complete halt. And making these programs virtual, I know that's something that other organizations are doing and it's really working for them. But for us, we work specifically with women and youth from peri-urban communities and rural communities where their, use of smartphones is very little. Very few people have smartphones, and it's very rare to find that they have consistent access to internet. So that hasn't been working out. And another challenge we've been facing is just on the issue of our funds and grants. Last year, our social enterprise, so we do apply for small grants and funds, but most of the money we receive comes from a social enterprise. And last year, our social enterprise gave us like 80% of the funds, money that we needed to run, to make sure that employees were paid, to make sure the programs were running successfully. And with the current lockdown that's happening in Zambia, which has been extended to 2 weeks, it means we had to stop operations because one of them was a holistic feminine wellness spa. And since we've stopped those operations, it means we don't have clients or customers coming in. And so there's no money that's being raised to give out. And our system it's not very well established yet, and we're still kind of trying to figure it out. I would say it's kind of hand to mouth because as we make the money, we use the money. And we didn't have a contingency budget set aside. We had the idea of, okay, 10% must go to a contingency budget just in case anything happens, which would be very useful right now, but we didn't actually start to put this in place. So even on the topic of contingency plans for the organization, we didn't have that. And that's very disappointing to hear, but it's also very disappointing to feel and experience as the leader of the organization. So I want to ask Kiiza, did you have any contingency plans in place?
Most of these organizations, definitely, if you are an organization, you should be having a contingency plan in case something happens. What do you do next? But now the question is, how prepared were we, and to what extent could our contingency plan apply in this context? We knew that perhaps something could happen and maybe a donor, a grant could be recalled to some extent. And maybe we may find a challenge internally within our administration, and we cannot have enough team to work on the project as quick as we want. But we never anticipated that we shall reach a point where you can't do anything that relates you to going to field, that relates you to be physically present in a particular area, and implement a project that requires you to engage communities, not virtually like we're doing now. So yes, we had a contingency plan, but that did not suit in with this kind of situation that we have in. But this did not deter us from still proceeding forward and brainstorming through our teamwork, how best can we fit in and how best can we find ourselves relevant in finding solutions. And one of the team members suggested that we should find a way, first of all, to work on misinformation. How do we change the narrative on how do you treat yourself and how do you keep yourself safe? And also, how do you contribute to those societies, people who live in our societies that depend on hand to mouth, like you said? People are running hungry and maybe they depended on working every day as they eat, and now they have to stay indoors for the sake of their life, but also for the sake of everyone's life. So how do you contribute by small things that you can do? Maybe it's a donation of a small meal to a neighbor that that cannot find a meal for a week, and maybe you have enough and you could do that. And if everyone does that in a way, you find yourself you're feeding so many people, and even other people feeding others. So those are the things that we thought now the contingency plan should come in to mitigate some of these small challenges that in our capacity can manage to find solutions for, as we wait perhaps to have a globalized approach on how to address this whole crisis, perhaps by finding a vaccination or something of that nature. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kiiza. Brighton, what gaps in your contingency plans did COVID-19 reveal, if any? And I know when you were answering the previous question, you said that you spoke to a lot of friends that have youth-led organizations, and they expressed the challenges that they're facing to you also. Did they bring up anything about their contingency plans and what worked, what hasn't?
Yeah, thanks, Alina. I think one thing that is quite relevant to acknowledge and accept is that things have changed. Things have changed in an unprecedented way, never before imagined. And for organizations, specifically in my case, coming from a small emerging organization, in most cases, you don't have a lot of liquidity that you can be able to save for rainy days. And also with the uncertainty that has come with the current crisis, I must admit that we had a price to pay as an organization, and we acknowledge the fact that this has befallen on us. What are some of the sacrifices that we're going to make for us to be able to hunker down through this particular process? So, for example, like saving 25% of part of our revenue as an organization meant 2 directors not being on payroll, and not being on payroll because they had other means of doing other consultancy jobs that never required them to depend entirely on the remuneration they were being given from the organization. So I think there was, to a greater degree, unity of purpose, where all of us said, who is willing to be able to forgo certain things in order for us to sustain our operations as an organization. And currently, I support the Earth Institute at Columbia University with communication and sustainability, offering virtual trainings. So to some degree, that has contributed to a cross-pollination of ideas on how best us as an organization can shift to being a more virtual institution. So I think, as you might know, we are a radio and leadership organization working with about 300 young people across Zambia, giving them skills and tools in radio broadcasting and production. But because the work that we do allows us to some degree work virtually, I understand working virtually is not the same as being in a radio station, you know, having very good acoustic, recording good sound so that you also fight things like misinformation. So what we've decided to do right now is all our young people are now sending in their recordings using mobile phones. So for example, if we have to make a half-an-hour radio magazine, instead of them walking to the radio station, jumping on public buses that put them at high risk, we are allowing them to record voice memos, which are being sent to the local coordinator of the work that we do. The local coordinator downloads them and puts some sound and edits them. Even though the quality is not as good compared to what they can get in a conventional studio, to some degree, this is helping. So after information is collected or the audio pieces are put together, then it's sent to the radio station in a more virtual pipeline. But this is something that we never imagined, even COVID-19. And we thought perhaps we can be able, even post-COVID-19, to be able to expand our reach by leveraging low-cost communication technology. But that doesn't mean our young people are not incurring more costs. And those costs, to some degree, have to fall on the shoulders of organizations, because we want to support them for them to be able to produce these podcasts. So we are creating a contingency approach where we support them with mobile bundles, like data bundles, for them to be able to record these pieces and send them via WhatsApp. But we had a price to pay in a nutshell, with, of course, 2 staff members not being able to be paid directly. But at the same time, we are trying to reduce our operational costs as much as we can by foregoing certain luxuries. I think we're in a space where we cannot afford certain luxuries as an organization, but also there are particular utilities like office space that you pay for. When you're in a shared space, you only pay for the internet and everybody is able to share in an office through Wi-Fi. But now we have to think about how can we invest more in internet routers so that each staff members who's working from the comfort of their home can have faster internet. So those are some of the expenses that we now have to incur, which we never anticipated at the beginning of this year. Even in our financial planning at the beginning of the year, we never really thought that we might have to invest in heavy, fast-speed internet for us to be able to continue operations. But at the same time, we are learning a lot from what others are doing. For example, being here in New York, when I wake up in the morning, there are two sounds which I hear. It's either sirens or the birds. Those are the two alternating sounds that I hear every morning. So we are learning from how can we record these sounds, for example, early in the morning, and how can we share these experiences with others that to some degree might be taking COVID-19 lightly. So we are really learning a lot from different institutions and organizations. Of course, Columbia University being one of them, because I'm working with them directly right now to produce most of their podcasts. I've observed that things have changed, and as an organization, we've acknowledged that things have changed and that we need to pay a certain price. But how do we pay that price with unity of purpose? And how do we pay that price with a common vision and mission as an institution, where we share the little resources that we have with those that don't have within the organization? Because I think there are disparities that exist in organizations. So how can we flatten that line? So we are working towards learning how best we can do that. I don't think I would confidently say we've really found a solution because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and we are trying to take each day as it comes as an organization.
Thank you, Brighton. And I think that you said something very important. You said that we are learning from each other. I think as young leaders, this is very evident. And one of the amazing things about being a Queen's Young Leader and the Queen's Young Leader platform is that it provided you with a network of brothers and sisters across Commonwealth countries that are also doing similar work to you, that are also going through similar challenges to you, and also trying to come up with solutions to the problems that they're facing, countrywide, internal, etc. So I want to kind of pose this question to everybody else that's on the Zoom call is, how has this global crisis affected your work, and what gaps has it revealed about your contingency plan? And anybody can pick it up.
Hi, my name's Francesca. I don't know if you can see me.
We can.
I come from Blackburn Youth Zone, which is a charity that helps young children and adults from the age of 5 to 18 and 21, and it's really affected us in terms of, you know, we're having to constantly adapt and carry out different activities for our parents and young people. But I must say though, the feedback has been absolutely amazing, and you know, I've been supported through them as well because I have cerebral palsy. So they have said to me that even though even though this crisis is going on, it's not going to affect you on a financial or your position altogether. You know, you're still very much part of us, and I think that has helped ease my anxiety a little bit. The best part for me is that I think because so many young people are now in my situation, and even worse, you know, we're the ones to say, you know, look, even though we are in this lockdown, it's going to be okay and it's going to be all right. And the feedback that we have received as a network in general has been absolutely phenomenal, and I'm just really proud to be here today on behalf of them, really.
We're glad you're with us.
Thank you.
Francesca, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, no
Does
problem.
anybody else want to share?
Well, I would love to go next if you allow.
Of course.
All right, my name is Jean from Rwanda, and it's a huge pleasure to be part of this. In Rwanda, it's nothing different really. We are equally hit by COVID-19, and our organization, Acts of Gratitude, that is working to support social entrepreneurs and their social enterprises is no different. We have shut down the office and spent some 3 to 4 days. And on the 5th day, one of us thought of moving to Zoom. And since 2 weeks ago, I suppose, we've been holding a Zoom meeting every morning, 8 to 9. And yesterday, we completed our Q2 operational plan of the year 2020, just interacting via Zoom. And I think that's a really great thing to celebrate as our team. And moving forward, starting tomorrow, we start implementing all the activities from that operational plan from our own homes. And for your information as well, as a way of adapting to the situation, we have recently opened our DocuSign account. And for those of you who don't know that yet, DocuSign is another application or website or whatever technology that helps you to sign documents without necessarily having them as hard copies. So you can sign, the whole board can sign a copy of meeting resolutions using your computers and your phones. So that's a little bit of how we are adapting. And in terms of challenges, obviously we are all wondering how we're going to manage the issue of salaries, rent, and of course, performing activities that require one to be physically somewhere. For instance, when you need to inevitably be with people you want to work with. And talking about programs, we are now moving our social entrepreneurship training to online delivery with the hope that the next cohort will start learning next month or latest in June. And that was supposed actually to be beginning of May. The cohort was supposed to be learning in a physical classroom. So that's it at AOG, or Acts of Gratitude in Rwanda. Thank you.
Safa?
Yes, yeah.
I just wanted everybody to say hi to Safa. How's things over there, Safa?
Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, as with the rest of the world, Maldives is also very much hit with the COVID-19 disruptions. In terms of course, the good side is that we don't have an outbreak, and there might be possibility that Maldives will be declared COVID-free, which is a good thing. But the downside is we are facing a lot of socio-economic challenges that have come due to this, of course, as with the rest of you all. In terms of the challenges that we are facing, our NGO was going to expand operations to nearby countries, Sri Lanka and India, which we had to put on hold. Other challenges we had was, obviously we had the expansion of our office, in which we were going to take 6 full-time staffs. We have to put that on hold also now. All of our major projects which we had, for instance, 2-year projects and 1-year projects, those are the main projects that were going to survive us. But unfortunately, all of those projects are also on hold. With one major project, and they have actually delayed it for next year. So this is the bad side. Well, some of our actually Maldivians have been very nice. For example, our landlord actually gave us a huge discount on our office because we are an NGO, which is a good thing. But yeah, other challenges which we came through was because we are a women's rights organization, due to isolation and quarantine and so forth, a lot of women actually reached out to us, and there is a possible surge in domestic violence and gender-based violence because women are left with no choice but to be in isolation with their abusers and so forth. So this is a huge thing that we need to address very soon, I think, in the Maldives. And a lot of women who actually made it, for instance, like who actually left their abusive husband or abusive families, and who actually made it through. Now their businesses also are on the brink of collapse and insolvency. So I think women will be affected much more due to this, and I think a lot of rights organizations, we have to prioritize and help to curb this situation. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I'm just jumping in because thank you so much for sharing that, Safri, from the Maldives. I think one should visit the Maldives one of these good days for a holiday. But I just want to echo your words in the sense of the increase in the number of gender-based violence, the number of sexual-based violence as well. We've been seeing, I mean, fortunately, South Africa, which is our neighboring country. I'm from Eswatini, by the way, for those of you who don't know. We've been seeing reports from South Africa that actually in just these 14 days of the lockdown, South Africa is in a complete lockdown right now, and subsequently Swaziland, because we rely highly on South Africa. Like 70% of our imports come from South Africa. So we then had a partial lockdown. But my point is, we've been hearing reports that just in these 14 days, the number of cases that have been reported of domestic violence have increased by 800. And locally, I've been hearing through my friends who are in the police force, asking if there's something that I can do for the LGBT community, because they are getting an increasingly amazing number of reports from LGBT people who are being violated by either their families. And this is something that has not happened in the country before. A lot of our LGBT people in the country are afraid of coming to the police to report. They would actually rather just homeless, move in with friends. But what we have seen this pandemic do is people are panicking. People are now actually able to go report to the police. But my point is, and I suppose it's a bit of a question to everyone, how do we utilize this time as a moment for us to re-strategize, for us to refocus or reinvest our efforts in trying to make sure that we are reaching out to as much people as we were before? I'm raising this point because I know my office is in Matapa, which is an industrial town in Swaziland, but we are working with people who are scattered out across the country. We've been trying to reach out to them, but we haven't been as successful as we would like to be. And I feel like this moment right now is a wake-up call for us to re-strategize. How do we reach out to those people who are outside of our semi-urban, peri-urban areas? How do we reach out to the rurals, making sure that they are also getting the services? Because a lot of people are seeing this as a win in terms of, using social media, in terms of using technology to reach out. But how do we ensure that people are getting the help post the pandemic? And also, how are we addressing the issue of economic impoverishment? Because women, LGBT people, children are more at risk when it comes to poverty. A lot of businesses are closed down. I mean, I know in Swaziland, even though it's a partial lockdown, we are not able to go to work. People are in their houses. What are they eating? They have to pay rent. They have to pay for utilities. How do you mitigate that? Thank you.
Thanks. Alina?
Okay, so for us, what we've been able to do is, as Women's Economic Empowerment Project, is re-strategize, and we're trying our best to make sure that our work is staying relevant to the need right now. And I know one of our responses was working with the Adolescent Health Working Group under the Ministry of Health with the Zambian government. And earlier this year, we had received 1,000 menstrual cups from Organic Cup. And initially, the distribution of these cups was supposed to be through a partnership with Planned Parenthood Association of Zambia and the Section Reproductive Health Rights Africa Trust. And this was under a project called TeenWise. Now, TeenWise is an already existing platform on Facebook where young people, it doesn't matter if you're coming from urban, rural community or middle income community or home, you can be able to access free sexual and reproductive health services if you log on under TeenWise, and it can remain completely anonymous, and donors, funders will pay for it, and you go in for this service to Planned Parenthood Association. So we were creating a podcast and it's April. We were supposed to receive funds from SRHR Africa Trust, but we are unable to now because they have also now, they're working remotely. A lot of their projects have been put on hold. So we were supposed to distribute these menstrual cups through this podcast, this radio show that we were going to do called Teen Wise. And we identified SRHR champions. So it was a lot of work that went into it. And unfortunately, with what's happening now, it means this can't go on as planned or proceeded, but we still have these menstrual cups to give, and we've still been doing menstrual hygiene management and working with adolescent girls to make sure they understand their SRHR, to make sure that they understand their menstrual hygiene options. And so what we did was we've received a number of donations of hand sanitizers and soaps, and we're also doing an awareness campaign on COVID-19, and we're going into the communities that we work in already, and we're educating them on what is coronavirus, what is COVID-19. A lot of the people that we work with think, obviously because they are Black, they think that, no, but I am Black, this is a white man's disease. So that has also been a challenge in educating them on what it is, and educating them, you are not immune to this because of melanin. It actually does not discriminate against race, gender, age, class, any of that, and showing them how to properly wash their hands, etc. So we're doing this now in partnership with Organic Cup and still distributing those menstrual cups. So we're doing the same thing we intended to do, but we've attacked it from a different angle. So now we're saying we want these women and girls to stay indoors. We don't want you to have a reason to come out and risk being exposed to somebody who has COVID-19 or someone who has come into contact with someone who has COVID-19. Mm-hmm. And so we had to go into the communities and do a quick menstrual hygiene management with the groups of women and adolescent girls we haven't already worked with and shown menstrual cups, etc. And we had to do that with them and then distribute the menstrual cups to them. And with the women that we teach financial literacy skills to, most of them are street vendors. It's mothers that are selling homemade fritas, which they make like 10 kwacha a day, or at most, if it's a very good day, 100 kwacha a day. So they live hand to mouth. So we had to now come in and say, all right, we're gonna give you some dry foods and also gonna give you the menstrual cup so that you don't have a reason to go outside. You make money so that you're able to feed your family. So re-strategizing has helped us. I know that it can be a challenge. Like I said earlier, some of the things we're unable to do right now. Some of our programs, we can't do them virtually. Financial literacy means we gather, it's like a community mobilization. We bring together 100 women or 200 women and we teach them financial literacy and also entrepreneurial leadership. And that's not working out right now because they don't have smartphones and they don't have access to internet. So we have to pick which parts of our work are most relevant to the need right now, and how can we still help the people that we already work with what we have. How can we do the best with the best that we have?
It might be that because you know those people, you have really good links into the community already, Alina. There might be people out there who have things to help but don't have that access. So I think there's something around partnerships, around matching up all your networks to make sure that the fewest people as possible are going into those communities. You know, we've heard a lot about people still going in and coming, and lots of different aid agencies going in. But you know, if we can get one team in to deliver everything using people they already trust, then that may be an approach. I just want to turn the spotlight on Nicholas Key. So Nicholas was really, we did a bit of a shout out about what had happened with people since COVID. And Nicholas was one of the people that came back and was really honest and went, you know what, we had no backup plans. And I think that was really fair for everyone, because we might have thought, you know, we have in our head, I think, because our generation hasn't lived through anything like this, you might say, you know, there might be economic downturns or there might be this and that, but something as global as this, we just didn't even imagine. So I just wanted to hear from Nicholas and see kind of what that felt like, and then what your next moves are. Maybe not specifically kind of just exactly what you're going to do, but your process of going, right, we have to change now.
Yeah, thanks, Francis. I guess I'll probably take a few seconds to give context.
Yeah.
So I run this organization. It's called Next Gen Creators. We essentially promote the learning of digital literacy skills for youth in the Caribbean. And so over the 5-year period, we've been having a lot of, I guess, initiatives catered towards that. So all in-person events and some augmented in-person events as well. So hackathons, coding workshops, coding boot camps, different tech startup summits. And the aim is to provide opportunities for youth through the tech ecosystem. So that could be employment, exposure to the space or more, grants for them to continue working on their open source projects, etc., etc. And so over the years, we have like tested out, I guess, like a virtual model. And so that hasn't worked because we've come to the conclusion that the Caribbean is not, or at least majority of the Caribbean isn't ready for that kind of digital penetration as yet, because digital literacy rates are extremely low. And in fact, they're not measured. And that was one of the problems that we had faced in the beginning, where we were trying to curate a community of software developers, but then later realized, like 2 years down the line, that, hey, we can't bring on more software developers if majority of the population doesn't really understand the nuances of the digital space. And so we had a long-term plan of, or rather like probably say 3 years down the line from now, to really get embodied into that digital space with like our own platform, and like different measuring instruments, and incorporating AI to teach students and to ensure that they understand the learning material. And so this year, for like the next 18 months, the original plan was to roll out like an entire stream and suite of initiatives that would have prepared us for that next step. All of them were in person. We did not have a contingency plan because, you know, there was no way for us to plan for something like this. I mean, aside from just the digital literacy rates, the internet, not the internet, but the digital or the tech infrastructure is not present. We had like a lot of community members that were going without broadband internet access, and many that were running on data, and in some instances didn't have data access at all. And so those were the issues that we were facing. And so as soon as COVID hit, or at least, you know, really hit the Caribbean, especially Jamaica, where we're headquartered, just everything kind of just went. Our funders got back to us and said, hey, because of this, we kind of have to pull out because we have to ensure that our existing initiatives can survive this new economic wave. And also, it couldn't have worked anyway with our initiatives because they were all in person, and the entire country, not just the country, but the entire Caribbean is on lockdown. And so we've kind of been having to play this back and forth dodge game of, okay, all right, what next? And so we're in this heavy grind mode of trying to re-strategize for the next 18 months. It's very scary. We've had to let go about 3 people who we at least had on contract that we had anticipated would have been on full-time this month, when we had started like 2 of the initiatives, when we were supposed to start 2 of the initiatives. But now we kind of just in the, I guess, solution mode. We already have 2 virtual initiatives in the pipeline. One is this COVID hackathon that we're running now for youth all over the Commonwealth. And so that's running from like now until about the 17th of May, which is pretty exciting. I'll probably share it in the group later, if anything, if you all are interested. So there's that. And then we're planning to release like our virtual Caribbean hackathon that we usually host every summer, later down in probably July. So those are the 2 things in the pipeline so far, and we're just trying to get things moving and re-strategize and, I guess, plan for the future. But yeah, that's where we're at.
Thank you, Nick, for sharing. And I think Francis said something really important that we're going to touch on, key partnerships. And something that we're doing is working with, I forgot to mention this in my 5-minute rant, is we're working with already existing youth-friendly spaces and community leaders to distribute, whether it's our dry goods, whether it's the menstrual cups. So working with SRHR champions coming from the communities that we've already trained, and we're making sure that they have the right protective gear to ensure their safety, number one. So I know that a lot of us under the Queen's Commonwealth Trust, a lot of members, and just across Queen's Commonwealth countries, a lot of youth leaders that are running organizations started their work because they were trying to fill a gap that the government wasn't doing or not doing adequately. So I want to ask who a lot of you have identified as key partners during this time to get the work done, and are you making any strives to work with the government in your countries in response to COVID-19? Brighton and Kiiza, I want to ask you, I know that we are all members of Queen's Commonwealth Trust, but we had the opportunity to take a course called Leading Change, where we first met Francis. So Kiiza, what are some of the lessons that you have taken from Leading Change that you are finding most relevant right now?
All right, thank you so much, Alina. Briefly, I would love to comment on the partnership, then I can also go to this question.
Cool.
Well, for us, driven by maybe the interest to see how do we keep ourselves engaged and how do we contribute to finding solution to the challenge. We thought that many people are going to be lonely and they will have some kind of stress in their homes, and those who live alone, and I can imagine even the elderly who are more at risk, they may be isolated, and they may want to find some kind of comfort and talk to some people. So that's how I got to discuss with TED, with the current program called TED Circles, and purposely to see how to reach out to these senior citizens and how do we promote some kind of conversation on the kind of lifestyle they live in, what things scare them, how can the public support them in one or the other, and how can also young people get involved in all this by trying to find a common ground. So we come up with an idea of TED Circles, which purposely is to have virtual discussions, online discussions, where you create a theme that purposely relates to COVID-19 and have inviting elderlies, the mature citizen or senior citizens, to come and discuss on random topics that that could interest them, and find a way you can comfort them, but also reduce on the stress, on the isolation and all that. So that partnership has worked, and we are going to be having our first virtual discussion on 22nd. So I think it was necessary for us by the fact that we are going to have some of the resources that TED is widely known of inspiring, motivating, and sharing ideas that were spreading. So that could be anything that anyone can do. You may want to find something that your organization may be willing to partner with another organization, just purposely to find a way you keep relevant, but also you contribute to your community. And as someone, I think one of the colleagues, I don't know, is called, he's called Merusi, something like that. He asked us, how do you reach out to the public and how do you help to mitigate the economic impact of what people are facing? And this is something that we are seeing, many people in the villages or those who are not having access to information, they still kind of live in the way they used to live because they don't see what is happening in the cities and they don't see how people are dying. So to tell them that you must stay indoors, you must wash your hands, you must not, you must do all this that is required by, to keep yourself healthy. They are not having all that information. And I think to that person, you may want to reach out to local society organization or perhaps authorities that are directly in touch with those kind of people. And there are local means on how to reach out to societies. Like I know in East Africa, it's most popularly known that they use local announcements. It could be either from village level or cell level where they go announcing home by home announcing what measures each family should take, how you're not supposed to go to this place and why you're supposed to stay inside. So those are the local measures they could use. Radio stations are widely heard of in those villages. The people have access to radios. Maybe you would wish to reach out to these kind of local stations which are heard by many of those people in those areas. So those are kind of collaborations you could establish while you are keeping yourself safe first, then also look out for others. Then the economic part of it, well, we don't have enough money. Countries are running, bankrupt. They are running to IMF, or, even businesses are closing down. Just today, I saw an email from Marriott telling us how, the measures they have taken amidst of closing all their franchises, most of them, how they are equally contributing to finding solution in the areas, by giving maybe shelter to the nurses who are working hard to save lives by taking food to families. So this is what perhaps we can also do. You don't have to have billions to contribute to maybe a food of a neighbor. You just have to find a way from the little you have, share what you have, maybe run a online donation campaign that people can contribute $1 or less than $1 that can go directly to contributing, maybe to finding food for people. That's how you can mitigate the problem. Then going forward to your question about the Queen Young Leaders skills and maybe what we have applied. And I'm glad that as of now, the world definitely needs more empathetic leaders, more pragmatic leaders that are ready to solve challenges than ever. We may need visionary leaders, you may have heard of them, but now we need real leaders that want to empower others to finding solutions. So me, myself, I find the element on leadership has played more a key role than perhaps other elements of, other skills that I've learned. And this goes back on how do you interact with your team in the organization. If you have a team of 10, how have you tried to reach out to them? Have you tried to know their problems they are facing in their homes? And have you also sat down with them to finding a strategic, maybe you want to discuss a strategic decision that can, contribute towards another activity that will solve a particular problem. I say this from my own experience. Yeah, usually you get to have these tasks that you direct to your team and tell them, you do this, let's achieve this. But now I reached a point of saying, okay, we are equally together in this. I'm also learning on this, but let's first understand from our own experiences, what are we facing individually? What challenges do you have? Then after knowing all that, then we contribute a solution to that. Maybe if it's economical, we find a way to contribute. You don't need to lay off someone because of the coronavirus. You may have to sit with them, tell them the economic impact it has on your organization, but also find a mitigated solution. Maybe you want to keep them as non-paid staff, but you contribute towards their allowances. Maybe you want to have them as a supporting team. Just morale booster is also necessary, telling them that you will wake up at 1, maybe if all this is over, we're going to have to keep going one by one, but not isolating others because we feel maybe by many few you remain stronger. So leadership is very necessary. Pragmatic and empathetic leaders. Leadership is one of the skills that I've mastered in this situation, and I think all of the people who perhaps young people who are listening now, it's high time that in this situation you rise up and you find solutions to these kind of challenges, and you find yourself actually more relevant and more supportive than ever you could ever think of.
Hello, yes. My name is Fiona. I am representing the CAMFED Alumni Network, Kaoma. I wanted to comment on the issue of partnerships. Our network is in Zambia, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Ghana, and Malawi. And I wanted to share experience of my fellow sisters in Zambia and Malawi in terms of how they are still managing to reach out to the vulnerable and the marginalized, especially in the rural communities. The good thing with us is that our network members are actually based in the villages themselves. So they've been part of the marginalized people in any case. So for example, those who are from Zambia, Alina and Brighton, I think you'll be familiar with places like Shangombo in West Province, where perhaps to reach there, you probably need 3 days on the road, traveling in, sandy areas of Senanga, or you are in Chilubi areas, which are, you have to get the ferry boat to get there. And we have young women who are based in those communities who have been trying to work with communities around sensitizing on attending school, following up on any school dropouts, ensuring that, children are happy when they go to school and that they learn. So what has been happening now with COVID-19 and schools have closed, and now when you look at education sector responses by governments, they are talking about distance learning. They are talking about online learning with TV and radio. How do you get TV and radio in the deep rural areas of Malawi or for Tanzania, where sometimes there might not even be electricity? And then sometimes, like, how many families also have, the luxury of having a TV? But what they have been doing is partnering with local community radio stations and trying to broadcast lessons, and also trying to talk about resilience, which is really needed during this time. And I think it was someone referred to a lot of misinformation that's going on. I think it was Kiiza, that people are sharing a lot of information, some of which you cannot even imagine. And now, because people have WhatsApp, it's very easy for someone to sit down and record an audio message and say, I'm a doctor, this is what has been happening. So the kind of messages we've been receiving have been quite insane, to be honest. But and having educated young women resident in the villages where you can relay correct information is very important. We've been able to signpost our young women to the WHO WhatsApp number, where you can just send a hi message and they return with all the information about COVID-19 that you need to try and really distill, correct the misinformation that's happening in the communities. So, and also partnering with the traditional leadership is also very important, because, as you know, especially for us who are from African backgrounds, traditional leadership is also key in terms of ensuring that people are connected to correct information, and making sure that they are also informed about what COVID-19 is and the importance of social distancing, especially in places where, going to the funeral, if somebody dies, everyone has to go to the funeral. It's a social norm. And now you are saying to people, stay away. What does that mean? Or you have to have limited numbers at a funeral. How do you limit the numbers of people who are coming to console their family? So really trying to drive correct information is very important, and our young women who are resident in these communities are very key in terms of pushing out that correct information. That's what I can add to local partnerships. So I'm hoping that the young people that are on this platform, as you plan for post-COVID-19, you really partner with those people that are in the marginalized communities. And Melusi in Swaziland, Eswatini, you mentioned that, the LGBTI communities that are in the rural areas, you're concerned about them. I think it's very important that, you establish those networks within those marginalized communities to ensure that you continuously reach them with the information and support that they need.
Maybe I'll ask Brighton one final question that he didn't get the chance to answer is, Brighton, what lessons in your leadership journey have you learned that you are applying and are most relevant right now?
Yeah, thank you so much, Alina, for that question. I think one thing that has been very apparent in my leadership journey through this very challenging time, I think it's resilience and unity of purpose, especially when working with others. Having been very far away from home and communicating virtually, how can I as an individual be an instrument of change? And I think this has also made me come to think about one old adage which says the success of any intervention is dependent on the interior conditions of the intervener. So as an intervener, as a young leader myself, how do I keep others motivated even as we go through these very uncharted waters? So I think resilience, unity of purpose, and being able to be that instrument to offer hope, even when personally deep down, I know that this is a very challenging time that is very life-threatening. And I think it has also made me realize that when a group of committed people are working towards one common goal, irrespective of what challenges that abound, people will be willing to, beyond anything, go far and above their normal call of duty. I've seen how my colleagues are working extremely hard despite these challenging circumstances. And I think it's up to us as leaders of organizations to be able to offer that hope. It could be through consistent communication, it could be through words of encouragement, and it could be through realizing that we're the instruments that should help carry through this bandwagon of people that are going through a lot of economic, social, spiritual, and emotional strife. So to a larger degree, I would ascribe resilience, sense of purpose, and hope to be the three leadership traits which I see manifesting during these challenging times.
So Safath says, I wanted to ask, let's say we organise and strategise for 3 months, but given the uncertainty, what would your advice be for the long term? For instance, what happens if we can't cope with rent and bills in 3 months and the projects are not even about to restart?
Tricky to answer because this is the first time that as an organization we've experienced something like this as well. I mean, there was the cholera outbreak in Zambia, but it wasn't nearly as bad. We didn't have a lockdown. People were still going to work in schools. No one was trying to identify if they're an essential worker or not. I think one of the things that we've done is we don't know. You have to be honest with yourself as a leader and say you're just as clueless right now as everybody else as to when will this whole thing kind of sizzle down. Will we get a second, third wave? Like Francis said, a lot of things happen. And one of the things that's working out for us right now is because we don't know how long we'll have to work remotely for, and we can't afford to pay rent. And where our office is stationed is at a place called Mobile Medical Services. And in Zambia, it's a law that every hospital or clinic has a youth-friendly corner. So we kind of went in and negotiated that we will run the youth-friendly corner. So that's where we moved our hub from Kaunda Square to Leopards Hill Road. And where the hub is, that's where our office space is now also. And with everything that's happening, we had to go in and say, we cannot afford to continue paying rent. And people are not coming in. The youth hub isn't being utilized. Donors have pulled out. Our social enterprise isn't making money. And so we had to renegotiate our terms with them and say, okay, we are unable to do this right now. I know in a lot of countries, a few countries actually, it's already been ordered that landlords cannot collect rent from their tenants. But that's something that we had to negotiate is, can you not collect rent from us, and in turn we'll do this other kind of work for you. And maybe that's one of the things that you can consider as well, is not really saying, okay, this is a budget that will last us 3 to 6 months. It's be honest with yourself and with your team. It's, you don't know how long. So I would say now as young leaders, whether we are at the running the organizations or we are at grassroots level or higher level, this is the time to now plan like crazy. I think we've all established that there were so many gaps and weaknesses in our contingency plans, and some of us didn't have any at all. So now is the time to, as we hope for the best, prepare for the worst and be prepared for it to last up to December. And I know this isn't what we want, but we can't look at it as, oh, okay, maybe we'll be able to continue and resume working like our previous day-to-day operations in a month or two. It's uncertain. World leaders are also uncertain how long this will go for. So as community leaders, as national leaders, as young leaders, as leaders in general, this is the time for us to now look at the gaps in our contingency plans, identify where we went wrong, identify what gaps were there, what challenges are we facing now, how can we re-strategize. There isn't a ticking time bomb to help solve this crisis immediately. So you can take as much time with your team that you need to re-strategize, look at what has been working for your organization so far, and really learn from those lessons and then implement.
That's an interesting question that not only most of people are asking themselves, but really like those who rent definitely have to ask themselves that question. How do you keep the rent? How do you keep paying rent? Even those who are having mortgages, how do you keep facilitating your mortgage so that you're not chased out? Well, I think for now, much as we'd want to worry about it, we should focus on how do we make sure that we are safe and how do we end the spread of COVID-19. That should be our focus. And that calls into question or some of the thoughts on how can we do that. And I would say myself, if you are thinking of paying rent, you may want to withhold that amount, because if you are going to spend the amount and you run short of cash, maybe to keep yourself alive and your family and your people who need food, that's going to be bad. So it's better you keep that money, don't pay rent for now. Maybe what you can do, you may want to write to your landlord or to the bank, which, like Aline said, most of these countries have passed regulations that address particularly this period. You cannot collect rent for maybe 4 to 3 or 5 months. You cannot, you cannot increase the interest rate on the mortgage and all that and the loans. All those, while that is happening, but also think on yourself as an organization or as an individual. What can I do to make sure that I plan for unplanned situations? Like maybe if this can go on for like 4, 5, even a year, what will happen to me? How will I survive? The other thing maybe you could do is renegotiate the contract. Ideally, I think even landlords, they're human beings. I know some of them act as if they are not, but they are not, they are human beings. If you tell them that definitely we can't do anything, everything is closed and we can't pay rent. However, we are willing to stay in the building, maintain it, and when it's possible, we shall resume the payment, and perhaps maybe we can only negotiate on a particular rate. Maybe you want to increase a small rate on what we used to pay, but for now you can't charge us, because even in this period, even if you say we shall resume paying even earlier, you can't manage because you don't know how this will last. But if you say you are stopping payment, in a contract, in law, you call this action of God. You didn't plan for this. No one planned for this. And frustration happens because of these situations. So if you're frustrated because of other factors, these are third-party factors, then he has to understand. If he doesn't, you want to rob the authorities, the local authorities, if you think they're going to perhaps, throw you out, to rob for a particular regulation that stops all the landlords from, evicting people in your area. You want to reach out to your leaders, your president, you tweet to them, or call out to them, go on radio stations, speak out this challenge, and maybe the whole country will come to awareness that, people have to think in the right way, and that includes caring for those who are not able to, meet some of the obligation because of this challenge.
I just want to say that I think this virus has, to some degree, helped us come together as a Commonwealth and young leaders to be able to share best practices and lessons. And I believe that all of us shall be supporting each other as we anchor through this process. I think it's a very interesting university of life to be going through. And if you need anything in terms of ways of keeping your team stronger and strengthening internal communication, I have a few tools that I would be more than delighted to share from what we're using at the Earth Institute.
Yeah, I think that there is, just like Brighton has said, there is the positive side to COVID-19, which is the world is becoming more and more united, and we're finding more time to learn from each other, just like this Zoom webinar right now is others, young leaders, what challenges we're facing, and we're sharing solutions to the common challenges that we are all facing.
Because this has been a first for me, because I've not really been part of the trust up until now. I think it's been quite inspiring for me to take back to some of my work colleagues, because we've been trying out a lot of initiatives with our young people. I mean, first of all, we've been checking in on our young people because a lot of them have got either or disabilities or mental health issues. And I think that is something that I think we need to really drive on. You know, I've been getting a lot of phone calls from them recently because they know that I'm in that high risk category because of my disability. And I think that has really helped me actually in terms of me as a person, because I've last couple of weeks I've been thinking, you know, am I going to be okay? Am I going to be able to manage? But you know, with the rest of the team support, you know, I feel like my disability as well has been well championed, and I think that's one of the things that I think I will take away from this is actually opening up to our disabled young people and actually getting them to say, you know, how are you coping with the virus? Because I will be brave out, and I will say this out loud, and I don't really care what reaction this might bring, but I have suffered a loss a few days ago to someone from COVID-19. He was my mum's partner, and you know, I just want to say to people that, you know, these young people that are still going out and still kind of partying, you know, this virus can kill anyone. And, you know, my mum's partner was, you know, he was a prime example of that, and I just wish people would stop and follow the rules, because, you know, by self-isolating and by being at home today, we are saving lives, and that is what people need to take away from this. And I don't think people are still getting the message.
Thanks for sharing that.
And I just want to quickly say as well, you know, we're going to do everything that we can from our own side perspective to make sure that our young people are still engaged within our offer, but obviously we will continue with that support. But, you know, we're all in this together within our different youth zones, and it's actually been really amazing to see everyone else's input, really. So thank you for that.
This is Olivier from Rwanda. Yeah, I'm from Ingenzi Social Entrepreneurship Program. So I'm a passionate social entrepreneur. We are fighting hard to overcome the challenges we are facing due to COVID-19. I liked you guys, the ideas you were sharing. I hope we shall keep learning from each other.
Safat says, thank you all. Your advice has been very helpful. We'll rethink a lot of things and discuss with our board. Oh, that's awesome. Great. All right. So if everyone's ready for the evening, morning, afternoon to commence, we'll just say thanks again and goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.